if you can keep the freedom. Quote,
Yeah.
At the Constitutional Convention's conclusion, Franklin said to have stepped outside the belfried brick building known today as Independence Hall. A Philadelphian named Eliza Powel supposedly asked the 81-year-old,
My passion and my mission to help you unleash your greatness within. My heart goes out to the underdogs that's on their way. If you think you can go from good to great, okay, let's motivate. Greatnesswithin.com. TJ Hoisington. Greatnesswithin.com.
quote, well, doctor, what have we got? A republic or a monarchy? A republic, Franklin replied, if you can keep it. And I'm thinking of the world we live in a little bit today, of how important these liberties and freedoms are. You said later in the book, 2 decades before the revolution, Franklin memorably declared, those who give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty or safety. Wow. Puts those comments a little bit in focus just with some of the changes in the world today, how careful we got to be to preserve those rights, some of those liberties, some of those freedoms. Anyway, any thoughts around that?
Well, I think, and for Franklin, that meant a free press, a press that was well, he obviously had his own biases, but he felt very strongly that
Both sides.
Yeah, exactly. The third estate, was incredibly important to a vibrant democracy. We'll see in the book later on that his grandson becomes the first American charged under the Alien and Sedition Acts for printing things against President Washington and then President John Adams. Franklin obviously valued a free press, but even I think more importantly, and this is what we'll get into his will later on, he felt that working class people played such a crucial role in maintaining a democracy because tradespeople worked at the ground level. They saw every day the effects of government policy, the effects of taxation. They mingled with people of all different classes, races, creeds. Franklin was very much a pluralist. I talk about this in the book too. He's known for donating to many different denominations, for churches, and even the first synagogue to be built in Philadelphia. He believed so strongly in sort of the public marketplace and the public exchange of ideas. And I think today, if he were back, that would be something that would really shock him. I think if he'd see, I don't think the partisanship would shock him because that was certainly of his time. He didn't get along with a lot of his founders, the Constitutional Convention.
Yeah, because you're right. Because in the subtitle, very divisive. Yeah.
I mean, his first American, he never had a state funeral, which blew my mind.
Yeah.
And that his first American eulogy wasn't read till nearly a year after his death. And it was read by his biggest enemy, a man that had slandered Franklin for having his son out of wedlock, maybe with a prostitute. So, I think the takeaway for me when I was reading that, when he said like a republic, if you can keep it, I love that story. Gosh, I hope that's true. And that's from Eliza Powell's diary, which you can read at the Library of Congress and online at their websites. But his notion of what that republic meant was messy. But at the same time, it was that working class people have a role to play and we have to support them and we have to listen to their voices. Otherwise, we will fall back into rule by gentry, which to him would be the same as being ruled by a king again.
Well, and what you're saying resonates with me as I do consulting inside companies. I'm telling leaders all the time, you've got to listen to your people. They're the ones closest to the action. And if they don't feel that they're being heard, let alone some of their greatest ideas that can solve some of your biggest problems are going to come from those frontline workers. And if you're not listening to them, and I think if Benjamin Franklin was alive today, he would really be an example of what it means to show good leadership and listen to your people and value all their efforts instead of picking and choosing, if you will. Anyway,
I think he'd walk into those focus meetings and he'd say, "How can I help?" I really do.
You said that in the beginning, and Peter Drucker, who wrote the Effective Executive book back in the 60s or so, he said one of the 8 patterns of successful leaders was the desire to contribute. And as I was reading the book, that kept going through my mind. Benjamin Franklin was constantly finding ways to help. How can I help? How can I help? Anyway.
Right.